All right, thank you. We'd like to go ahead and get our meeting started this evening. Thank you all for being here, and welcome to the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. And it's Tuesday, August 13. And if we could please start with a roll call.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Harvey?
Here.
Mayor Delasso?
Here.
Vice Mayor Skillman?
Here.
Councilmember Landon?
Here. And before we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I have a special request this evening. After we're done with the pledge, if you could all just remain standing for just a minute or two. And this is a moment of silence and remembrance that I'd like to honor Patrick Leonard, who was shot and killed 2 weeks ago now, I believe, here in the city. It was the 26th of July. And so I would just, out of respect, like everyone to just stand after the Pledge of Allegiance for just a minute or two in silence. But for now, if we could stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Okay, and I would like to introduce everybody that we have, well, not everybody, I'd get carried away if I did that, but that we have here for staff and council. So I'm your mayor, John Delasso. We have Vice Mayor Wendy Skillman, council members Mark Landman, John Moore, and Susan Harvey, our city manager, Damian Obid, our city attorney, John Bacher, our chief of police, Michael Parrish, our city engineer and director of public works, man with the longest title in Cotati, Craig Scott, administrative services director, Angela Corder, and our director of community development, Noah Hausch. And we also have, most importantly, our city clerk, Warren Burgess. And with that, we'd like to move to item 4, which is approval of minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I will abstain.
Please show of 4 yes, 0 no. This is really hard to say. And 1 abstention. Thank you. All right, now we're at item 5, which is announcements. Meeting orientation for new attendees and viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council will consider the item and citizens are afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizens' business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. The City Council may or may not choose to respond to comments as the government code allows. However, if the City Council declines to respond, it should not be perceived as giving credence to or agreeing with any statements that the City Council or its members believe are incorrect, misinformed, or purposefully biased. The City of Cotati has special open office hours on Monday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m. by appointment in the Community Development Department at City Hall as part of its Cotati Open for Business program. This program provides personalized assistance and information to developers, current Cotati business owners, and those interested in starting a new business within the city. The Rohnert Park Cotati Regional Library hosts events for all ages, including art exhibits, book clubs, and children's programs. All events are free and open to the public. For more information, call the library at 584-9121 or visit sonomalibrary.org. The Cotati Historical Society Museum is open regularly the second Tuesday of each month from 5 to 7 p.m., Saturdays from 1 to 4 p.m., and by appointment. For more information, call 794-0305. Citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up at nixle.com or by texting your zip code, which is 94931, to 888777. Measure G supports police services a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at cotaticity.org. And finally, the 29th Annual Cotati Accordion Festival is August 17th and 18th. Mark your calendars for this two-day event featuring national and international accordion entertainment in La Plaza Park from 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. With that, we'll move now to item 6, which is approval of final agenda. Are there any changes, City Manager?
No changes.
All right, seeing no changes, we will then move to citizens' business. And I'm going to read this short little blurb. So any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item listed on the consent calendar or any matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2017-02, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. And again, just as a reminder, if you are here to speak on an agenda item, this is not the spot for it. Those will come up shortly. So anybody for citizens' business? Ms. Alderman.
You have a major problem today that one of your police officers got on social media and attacked George Barrick while on duty. This is due to your lack of a social media policy, which I have been asking for at least 3 or 4 months. It's getting to the point, I'm starting a federal suit, and if you guys don't do it, it's going to be under an injunction. Mark Lamon has attacked me for 2 years on social media. You guys have done nothing. And the whole federal suit is based on your culture of for the last 5 years, you have passed every agenda item. 710 out of 717 have been unanimous. Why are we citizens even here anymore? You're not going to listen to us. You don't put anything on the agenda that is ours, that we asked for. Weed abatement for 4 or 5 years. The senior services, anything. Homelessness is not being dealt with. You guys, as the attorney in San Francisco said yesterday, Cotati is no longer a democracy. You guys are just making it worse by every single thing you do is unanimous. And you degrade our speech, you chill our speech at every rate, even with your social media policy. 40 out of 60 of Mr. Lamon's replies were on my post. He doesn't write his own posts. That's a fair standard for chilling my free speech. And you guys did nothing about it, despite my begging to. So you need to work on a social media policy, or you're going to be hearing about it from a federal judge.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on citizens' business? Mr. Barrich.
Good evening, Council. I'd like to welcome everybody who's in the room tonight attending this very important city meeting, and everybody watching at home on video. My name is George Barrich. I'm a former city councilman here. I served in 2008 and 9, and the mayor did something very interesting tonight, calling for a moment of silence. And it made me think to give that some thought for a second. When I was on the city council, one of the first issues that come up when a couple of us were sworn into office was one member of the city council moved that we discuss and vote on removing the moment of silence that had been with Cotati's city proceedings for some 40 years, as far as I know, from what I can tell from people who've been here that long. We had a lively discussion about that, and my thoughts and my concerns were I basically ignored, and the council decided to remove the moment of silence. Now, I take it, as we left it, any city council member has within their power and their purview to ask the council to have a moment of silence for something that they're concerned about, which I assume the mayor did. The question for me becomes, I don't know where this kind of ends. A lot of people who lose their lives in Cotati, either working for Cotati, residences, our neighbors, natural causes, criminal conduct, disease, and so forth. I don't know where you take this. I don't know where this stops. I think you ought to be fair, though. Very unfortunate thing that happened to Mr. Leonard, Patrick Leonard, I believe, and our hearts all go out to him. I know that you lived only a few blocks away, sir, so I understand, but I'd like to see the council have some kind of consistency. We ought to have compassion and concern for all of our Cotati citizens that we lose, and not, pick certain ones out because of the newsworthiness or the heinous act that may have been involved. But I want to thank you for at least bringing up the moment of silence, but maybe think about having some kind of consistent policy on this. It would show that the city government has given this some thought and has some depth. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anyone else like to address the council under citizens' business? All right, seeing no one, I'm going to go ahead and close the citizens' business, and we will move on to item 8, which is our consent calendar, and we have 2 items on consent. Is there any discussion to pull any items or motion to approve?
So I'd move to approve 8A and B.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Well, we had, I can ask if there was public comment, but that's what the previous section was for too. Would anybody like to speak on either of the closed session items? Yeah, you had your opportunity up here, so okay. So we're good. We're good. Thanks for checking. I don't get these things right all the time. That's for darn sure. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Please show a 5-0 vote in favor to approve both items. And we are now under item 9, which is any direction from council on future agenda items. Does anybody have any new items to bring up this evening?
Not tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing this way?
Not this evening.
All right. All right. I think the moment everybody's been waiting for has now arrived. We're at item 10A, which is the glyphosate ban for municipal applications. Now I'll turn this over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this item is about glyphosate specifically, and herbicides and pesticides more broadly. So glyphosate, otherwise known as Roundup, that's the over-the-shelf version, or Ranger Pro is a concentrate version of that, is a non-selective broad spectrum herbicide used to kill weeds, especially broadleaf weeds and grasses known to compete with other landscaping and crops in the agricultural context. So the City Council earlier this year had requested that staff look into this topic and bring it back for discussion. And as we all know, but for the benefit of everyone that's watching, the city is responsible for maintenance of city buildings, parks, streets, sewer systems, and the water supply systems. This includes maintenance of the weeds and pests, and some of this is accomplished directly by public works crews as well as third-party contractors. Primarily, well, the only third-party contractors we use is a landscape contractor and another contractor, Terminex, that does like insect control around city buildings. Landscape maintenance is primarily accomplished by mowing or string mowing, otherwise known as weed eating. That's the primary method that the city uses. And in some areas, glyphosate is used primarily like in decorative landscape plantings. So this is not like turf areas. This is like areas where you have flowers, like planted flowers and that sort of thing. You have a planted bed. And in those areas, there could be point application for invasive weeds if the weed barriers and mulch are not sufficient to control the weeds. In some limited hardscape areas, there's point application of glyphosate. For example, like between a curb and a sidewalk, and the crack there where you can get plants or small trees growing out of it. There's no application in the creeks or drainage ways, no application in turf areas of parks. And glyphosate is the only herbicide that the city or the city's contractor uses. Application is typically twice a year to control the weeds. As I mentioned earlier, the city also contracts with Terminex to control pests around City Hall, this building, the police station, which is across the parking lot, and the train station. This is out on East Cotati Avenue. And Terminex uses what they call integrated pest management approach. So that basically means that they try to clean the area, they try to exclude pests, they try to trap them, and then finally they would use repelling if the prior steps don't work. That's a typical integrated pest management process. In the fourth step, repelling, they use a product called EcoVia, and the product sheet's attached to the staff report. It's an organic product. Is my understanding, it's not for killing insects, but for repelling them. And then the city also is a co-permittee with the county as well as all the other cities in Sonoma County for our municipal stormwater permit, otherwise known as the MS4 permit. That permit does require Cotati and all the other cities in the county and in Sonoma County to follow good integrated pest management practices, which we do, but we don't have a formal consolidated written IPM, which I'll talk about more in a minute. Also attached to the staff report is the product data sheet for glyphosate issued by the California Environmental Protection Agency Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, otherwise known as OEHA. And they publish the which is known as the Prop 65 list. So things, compounds that are either proven to be carcinogenic or likely to be carcinogenic are published in the Prop 65 list. I think we've all seen like those in various parts of our lives. It's funny, I see them now a lot in restaurants that use like deep fryers and things like that, because deep fryers can produce, those high temperatures can produce material. Anyway, it's just when you cook things at high temperatures, it changes the chemical composition of things. So anyway, they did publish a Prop 65 summary sheet for glyphosate, which is included in the packet. It was based on an International Agency for Research on Cancer, the IARC, which found that glyphosate is an animal carcinogen and probable human carcinogen. And they're also included in the staff report is the frequently asked questions from OEHA on this Prop 65 listing. So I guess the last thing I'll mention is we have been looking at alternative herbicides, and they are expected to require more frequent application, and generally they're more expensive than glyphosate. So based on discussions with our landscape contractor and sort of purchasing the materials ourselves, we expect the material cost to be, and the landscape contract cost, to be between $1,500 and $2,000 a year. It's unknown yet what, for city public works staff time, if it ends up being a lot more time, but that's something that we'd have to try out and just see how it goes. It is expected that, as you saw in the beginning of the staff report, the recommendation is to eliminate all municipal use of glyphosate as soon as possible. And for city public works, that transition can be effective fairly immediately. For the landscape contractor, we need to bring back the contract, which I expect in the next month or so we could do with the updated requirement to not use glyphosate if the council so decides to move forward with that recommendation. And I just will say that, you know, with the switch in the maintenance routines, there definitely is a possibility that things could look a bit rougher from time to time as we sort of figure out the new maintenance regimen, because glyphosate has been used for quite a long time, and so people are familiar with what that, maintenance crews are familiar with what that is and how that's used and how often they have to revisit sites. And so switching to a new product will require a transition period. So that is just something I did want to point out, that during the transition period, there could be some areas that look a little rougher than normal. And then finally, I just will add that the second part of the recommendation is that we, especially after we have a little bit of time to work with if the council so decides to work with the transition of glyphosate, that we can put together a comprehensive integrated pest management plan, which is it's really a good communication tool, because we do a lot of this stuff already, but I think it's a good opportunity to have it all written down in a single place where not only we can easily communicate it to our contractors, but also to the general public that have questions about what the city does. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
All right, thank you very much. Again, just for the public, just so you know the process. So we'll get a staff report. We first come back to council to see if there's any questions of the staff based on that staff report. Then we go ahead and open it up for public comment. I do have a number of speaker cards here, and if you didn't fill one out, it's not the end of the world. You just raise your hand, I'll point at you, it's all good. And then they'll come back to us after we close the public comment for a final decision. So just so you got the process down. So I'll start with council member questions. Councilmember Landman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to ask something. So I did ask earlier in the year if council would support having this brought back to be looked at. And I think it was a good thing to do, but I'm not sure if I framed the question in the best way possible. And I say that as I read the staff report here. I'm looking on packet page 32, where they talk about what other cities, and what the county have done in Sonoma County. And several cities have indeed directed their contractors to no longer use glyphosate. And the county went so far as to say no synthetics, but just in some areas. They didn't do the whole area. But one thing did jump out at me that I thought was notable, and that's the town of Windsor, a full year ago, actually just voted to ban all municipal use of synthetic pesticides and herbicides. And as I'm looking at the report here, other than our use of Ranger Pro glyphosate, which the staff recommendation is to stop using, I wonder if we're close enough tonight perhaps to make that jump to just going to a straight out ban on synthetic pesticides and herbicides. It would seem like we're about there. I'm just simply saying that because it makes sense that if we're going to do this, we certainly want to do it in the best way. We want to have the best practice. And I'll take responsibility because I probably should have researched it deeply and seen that. But at the time, I think for a lot of us, and as I can see from looking at other cities, glyphosate was the thing on our minds. But if you're going to do this, and if you're going to make the effort to moving these alternative methods, which I'm sure some staff will never forgive us for, we should try and do it right. So I wanted to see what staff thought about that. Is there anything we're missing? Do we have the ability to do that tonight, or do you think it should come back if we wanted to do that?
Well, I mean, I think my recommendation is that we just would take a little bit more of a deliberate approach to that through the integrated pest management plan, so that we can really dial it all in terms of what our maintenance practices are. It is true that glyphosate is, to my knowledge, really the only synthetic pesticide or herbicide we use. It's an herbicide. And I'm not aware of any synthetic pesticides that we do use. But the recommendation is, rather than just, is to move in that direction through the integrated pest management plan. Just because it's, I guess my level, just from my perspective, from a staff perspective, the transition would be more deliberate in terms of making sure that we've dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's in that process.
Okay. So what's the time frame we're looking at for the integrated pest management program to come back? We're thinking roughly a month or so?
Well, we haven't talked about it, but it probably would be in the several month time frame. But
okay, but relatively soon?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It wouldn't be long. It's just really making sure that we research exactly, and after we start using these alternate products, how those maintenance routines flush out and what we need to do.
Oh, I'm sure we'll have discussions about that. That will be an ongoing process to learn. I have a gravel driveway. Anybody else in the room have a gravel driveway that they used to use glyphosate for? Worked great. You stop using it. You feel much better about that. That's the right thing to do, but it's a lot harder. So it isn't a light thing. And I've heard this from people in other cities. But with that, I'd really like to ask, and if I would be satisfied to see if we could have that just come back then as part of that IPM and just know that that's our goal, to have that done. If the council agrees, I think that would be a good direction to go. Seeing as,
Yeah.
from what I can see from your practices, you're there. I was alarmed when I saw a call to action that mentioned that we were using a toxic insecticide, but actually, as I read the ingredients, it's thyme oil and rosemary oil. And I've used rosemary oil for colds. It will kill anything, so I have no doubt that it's effective, but I would want to check all these ingredients and make sure that we're actually doing what we say we do. So, okay, I'd be happy with that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor Skillman, any questions for staff?
No, thank you. It was a really well done report, and I appreciate it as a first step towards our ultimate goal, so thank you.
All right, Councilmember Harvey?
Two questions. First one is the integrated pest management plan. Since, as you mentioned in the report, we have stormwater discharge with the county. Will we start as a baseline, looking at their plan to see if we can have some consistency there, since we all share in the same stormwater discharge? So that's my first question.
Yeah, so certainly when we do the IPM, we'd be heavily borrowing from some of our neighbor agencies to see what their practices are and pick the best practices. Certainly if that's the direction of the council to move away from synthetic pesticides and herbicides, which I think we're, if the council votes to not use glyphosate anymore, we've probably effectively done already, but we'll just make sure we've, like I said, have our T's crossed and our I's dotted. But some other agencies have some different considerations. I mean, I think, when it was mentioned by Councilmember Landman about the county, they have the water agency and some other agencies underneath them that this would apply to, and so they don't have an outright ban for that reason, because they deal with other issues. Like the water agency, for example, has flood control maintenance responsibilities, and they have Ludwigia and those kind of things that are really hard to kill. And so I think they have to balance, from their perspective, they have different issues, but they have to balance the environmental damage that pest causes versus use of glyphosate, right? And so that's why I'm saying it wouldn't necessarily be a straight copy from some other agency. We have to just pick the best to accomplish the goals that the council wants to reach.
And there's nothing with our permit that would require us be consistent, since we're all participating in the same stormwater system?
We all have to follow good integrated pest management planning processes.
But not necessarily exactly the same process?
Correct.
Just
correct. Yeah.
consistent.
So the integrated pest management is just essentially for different types of applications. It's just a series of steps that you should go through. Progressively more intensive measures to try to control something. And so that's really the process that you're using the best available methods to do it. But it didn't have to be the same.
Okay. And then my second question is in the financial considerations you mentioned, that it'll be approximately $1,500 to $2,000. Now that's just to use organic herbicides. Part of what will come back to us is the schedule that may be different. So there's the cost of whatever chemicals we use plus whatever resources, because as is mentioned elsewhere in here, typically now they only have to make applications twice a year, and this, whatever we end up with, may ultimately have to be done, more frequently, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So those were my questions.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Councilmember Moore, any questions
No, I don't have any questions. They were answered. Thank you.
at this point? Okay. And I have comments which I can hold off on those until we get there. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to open the public comment period. I'll call your names, and I will guarantee that I'm going to butcher some of these names, partly on people's penmanship, just letting you know ahead of time. But here's the best I can do. So Megan Kwan? Did I get that right?
Megan
There you go.
No one gets that one right. Good evening, Mayor Deloso and City Council of Cotati. My name is Megan Cowan. I am on Sonoma County Conservation Actions Board, and we have been running a campaign for a toxic-free future that aims to get synthetic pesticides out of public spaces. We follow the definition that the California Department of Pesticide Regulation uses for pesticides, which includes herbicides. So just the sign includes herbicides, insecticides, and any other asides that are used in municipal places. I take a class at Cotati Park every week that's given by a local business, the Cotati Community Acupuncture Community. And I have been hoping that Cotati would look at this issue. And so I'm so excited to be here tonight to be part of this conversation. And I really want to thank staff of Cotati for putting together such a thorough report, and Councilmember Landman also for really championing this effort. I have worked with many other cities in the county on putting forward synthetic pesticide bans. In Windsor, they did ban all synthetic pesticides, and their integrated pest management does have a carve-out for emergencies where they can use synthetic pesticides if they need to. I think that's a really appropriate idea. I think that's something that Cotati absolutely could implement, have a ban on all of the kind of routine cosmetic use of synthetic pesticides, but still allow the city to bring in these chemicals if they're needed on a 1 or 2 time basis. I also wanted to second Mark Landman's suggestion for having the city do a full synthetic pesticide ban. I think it's cleaner. I would worry that in substituting a different chemical for glyphosate, that something even more dangerous could be used. We've had cities that thought they were using an organic product, and it wasn't organic at all. A lot of the other synthetic herbicides on the market are even more dangerous and less tested than Roundup. And I also just want to make sure that if staff decides to use organic pesticides that are non-exempt or 25B, that they do keep records of where those pesticides are used, because it still is required, even if it's an organic pesticide, to keep records. And I think that's important to show your citizens the great job you're doing, and also great for transparency as well. So again, thank you very much again. Very happy to be here in full support of Cotati making this step forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. And next is Sarah Perigui.
Hi there, good evening. My name is Sarah Paraguay. I live in Petaluma and I play, shop, and do business here in Cotati. I'm really excited that you guys as a city council have agreed to bring this to the agenda this evening. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to do some research to look into alternative options besides harmful herbicides and pesticides. I would urge you as a city to take that full step to banning all synthetic pesticides and herbicides within city limits. I think it's really important not only for the health of your citizens, but also for the health of all community members who come to Cotati to do their business, to play here. That's extremely important. Additionally, I want to bring up the fact that as much as you try after a synthetic spray to keep things on the plants, things will run off into waterways. They will flow into our bay. They will be dangerous and cause harm to marine life. Do you guys really want that on your hands? Probably not. One last thing I want to bring up is that synthetic pesticides and herbicides are also extremely dangerous for our friendly pollinators, bees, butterflies, and other winged creatures that help pollinate plants and all sorts of delicious produce that all of us love to eat. Now, with synthetic pesticides being used, this does harm our pollinators, and we need to make sure that we're protecting them for the future generations and for our current generation as well too. So again, I urge a full synthetic pesticide ban in the city of Cotati. I'm a little concerned about the phased proposal that you guys have brought forward, but I know you can do it. I have a lot of faith in you guys as a city, and I really support this ban. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Nicole Warwick. Hi.
Thank you so much for hearing my comments today, and thank you for the diligence that you've done in regards to this issue. My name is Nicole Warwick. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Families Advocating for Chemical and Toxic Safety. We're a project of the Center for Environmental Health. I'm also an environmental health program manager for a local sustainability nonprofit called Daily Acts. We educate people on least toxic practices in landscape management, so should you need support in that regard, we are available to support that process here. I'm also on the board of directors for the Ceres Community Project. Ooh, excuse me. Who provides...
You realize there's no reason to be nervous.
Yeah, no, I do.
We're
I just all of
humans.
a sudden got, whew,
It's all right.
Thank you. Well, with Ceres, we're providing meals for the people who are sick in your community. And so I'm seeing this issue from the impacts of children's environmental health to adult health, and then on the service end, providing support to our communities who are dealing with exposures. We know that pesticides such as glyphosate, pyrethrins, which are commonly used in our contractors with other organizations, toxaphene, they're responsible for much more than just cancer. They're responsible for the impaired fetal growth that we're seeing amongst our youth, for impaired cognitive functioning, for neurodevelopmental delays, for things that we're dealing with here in Sonoma County. We have some of the highest rates of children in special education, and yet we also have children who have exponential exposure to toxics and pesticides in their natural environments, in the places where they're learning, places where they're playing, places where they're living. Oftentimes, these disease disorders do not present themselves initially. They do when we see things like childhood cancer rates and leukemia, but oftentimes it's latent, and it doesn't show up until later in life. And I stand here with a bit of nervousness because I'm one of those people who was exposed to chemical pesticides as a child growing up and developed breast cancer in my 30s. And so this is really important to me because I've heard all the variables about the aesthetics, about the costs, but we cannot put that over the priority of our children's health. And so I also urge you, thank you, Councilmember Landman, for extending that ban to more than just glyphosate. It needs to include all synthetic pesticides, and then we figure out the how afterwards. But first, we need to make these initiatives to safeguard our community and protect our children. I just want to thank you. Thanks for letting me be here. Thanks for letting me sit in the nervous feelings of what it is to be somebody who's been directly impacted by this and has the opportunity to stand before leaders who are primed to make change. So thank you for your leadership and for making these important changes.
All right, thank you for your comments. I totally love the fact that people are applauding, and that's wonderful. But you need to find an alternative where there's like no noise to your applause, like this or like this. I see some people doing this, only because it slows our meeting down. Or yeah, you can do any kind of faces you want at me. That's perfectly fine. All right, I'm looking for Julie. It's either Reyes or Royas. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go with my second guess of Royas. Got it.
Royce, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here and for speaking with several of you over the last several months. My name is Julie Royce, and I am a newish one-year resident of Rohnert Park and a military wife and a mother of two. This is also a very personal topic for me. In May, I heard screams from upstairs, and I went running. And it was my 9-year-old son in the shower, and he was covered in head-to-toe hives that were bright red and angry. Just hours before, a truck, a maintenance crew, was spraying in the median while he was riding his scooter right in front of him. I took him to the doctor because he also was born with a heart condition and has several allergies and other medical conditions, so I wanted to really make sure that my assumptions were correct and that this wasn't a new allergy or a new issue. And they tested him, which is not typically something you do, and he had a very high level of glyphosate in his blood, and they told me that he was extremely allergic to glyphosate. So I went to the city of Rohnert Park and I talked to them, and lo and behold, on that May day, they were not spraying glyphosate in the median, but another synthetic pesticide. And then I realized he is either allergic or extremely sensitive to at least one other, if not many other synthetic pesticides. And he was not playing in it, he was not rolling in it, he was not even touching it. He was simply riding his scooter on the sidewalk while they were spraying in their trucks in the median. So I'm here today to let you know that when he goes to school, it's a nut-free facility and they have an allergy table, but when he goes to play, he's scared all the time that he may break out in hives or become anaphylactic because he's not sure what may be sprayed in that park or in that walkway. So again, I definitely urge the full ban, and I think you can do it because, as you've mentioned, Cotati uses a very small amount of glyphosate and in weed control, so it's just such a minor adjustment, and we can all adjust and work with you to spread the good word. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for the lack of applause, too. Appreciate that. Terry Moon? I think I've only gotten one name right so far. Pretty bad. Sorry about that.
But I was impressed you pronounced glyphosate correctly. So.
Yes, glyphosate I can say, though. Yeah.
My name is Terry Moon. I live on Liberty Avenue in Rohnert Park. It's technically a half a block in from Cotati, but I spend a lot of time in Cotati. And really touched by the woman who just spoke and the story of her child. And as a holistic healthcare practitioner for over 30 years, I know that what's reacting is our immune systems in our bodies, right? And you can't be selective when your defenses go up inside with your immune system trying to protect you. It tends to do that with everything. That's why kids that have issues with synthetic pesticides and other things often have issues with eggs and flour and wheat, you know, lots of different things. It's a way that our body functions in the world to protect us. So I'm happy that we're able to consider this. I love the idea of following the precedent that Windsor has set. I do a lot of volunteer work with Daily Acts, and I have my own vegetable garden, which I am very careful to make sure it doesn't get any kind of toxic things on it, because I know I'm going to eat what's in there. And yeah, it involves pulling weeds, and weeds have never hurt me. They are not the least bit dangerous. And, you know, my landlord likes to spray vinegar on them. There's all kinds of different creative ways to deal with it besides poisoning it and considering the possibility that that poison not only goes on the weed, it goes down into our groundwater and it goes into our air and sometimes things that we get in our bodies. So, yeah, and I think about, you know, a baby crawling around in the park, a public park, and, you know, it it's on all fours, and then it puts its hands in its mouth, which babies can't stop doing, right? And then, so it's really hard to keep all those things separate. And so that if we can just keep our environment clean of toxins, then we don't have to be as concerned about our children getting poisoned as they're playing outside in the world. There's so many other things to say. I didn't take notes to speak tonight, but I'm just grateful to have the opportunity that you're considering this, and I would also encourage you to make it the whole thing, all synthetic pesticides, because it's really hard to differentiate between them in the human body. They all react similarly. So thank you for hearing us tonight.
All right, thank you very much for your comments. Matthew Callaway.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having us, Mayor also and the entire council. My name is Matthew Callaway. I'm the canvassing director for Sonoma County Conservation Action. Recently, my team has been canvassing Cotati and talking to a lot of the residents here about this possible ban and about the effects of glyphosate and other synthetic pesticides on the people, on the animals, on the watersheds. And Cotati, the residents of Cotati are probably more aware of the adverse effects of glyphosate and other synthetic pesticides than a lot of the other towns we've been to, and are really unified in their opposition to it. One of the most common questions I got was that they thought that this was already banned. They thought that their city council and that the land managers, the people here, were already protecting them because they all knew these chemicals are so closely associated with human cancers, with other health effects. It's bad for the pollinators, terrible when it gets into the groundwater. And they were already convinced that they were being protected from this. And so I really encourage the city council to take action, to follow through with what the people already expect is happening, and to really not just go for the glyphosate ban, because as has been said, so it's very easy to transition from glyphosate to an even more harmful chemical, but to follow suit of Windsor and the county and go for a full synthetic pesticide ban, take the steps necessary to protect the residents, the children, the pets, the pollinators, and follow through with what is kind of already the expectation of people. We talked to hundreds of people here in Cotati, and they're ready to pay for this. They're ready to take whatever steps are necessary to support you guys in your efforts to protect them. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And my last speaker card, this gets back to penmanship. Anybody fill out a speaker card whose name I haven't called yet? What's your name? Jonah. It's you. Yeah.
You got the last name right.
Yeah.
Really smart people at that end.
I've heard that. No, I've heard that. That's true.
It's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name's Jonah Pelter. Sorry for the bad handwriting. I'm with the Sonoma County Conservation Action. I actually work with Matthew, who just spoke. I've been canvassing, actually when I first started with the SCCA, I started canvassing here in Cotati to get, synthetic pesticides banned from our community parks. And most citizens were very in favor of it. In fact, a lot of citizens were surprised that this hadn't happened sooner. A lot of citizens of Cotati are very proud. I see a lot of Keep Cotati Weird stickers, so they're proud of the progressive nature of Cotati. It's a pleasure to be in this community, and this is something that, yes, cost absolutely is something to consider, but you've heard it already. I mean, these pesticides do nothing but harm. Yes, they keep lawns looking nice, but they can get into the watersheds. The last thing, Northern California needs is, water to go bad in any one of our beautiful cities. So we need to really, think about, yes, money is important, but, human lives are a lot more important. So we need to do whatever it takes to make this happen. Please be progressive on this and join Windsor and the County of Sonoma, and keep Cotati weird. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So that's it for speaker cards. And if there's anyone else who would like to speak on this issue, Ms. Alderman?
I'm actually for this ban, but I think it's very hypocritical of you to have the city council here request and have it within a few months, this whole ban on where so you city council, you can put things on the agenda in months, but we citizens for at least 4 years have been asking for weed abatement that is in your city code to be enforced in the city. It has not been enforced since 2012. And you refuse to do anything about it, even put it on the agenda. So I just think it's really hypocritical that you can, when you have you're going to get a whole room of people in because it's a item, you'll pander to all this, but when it comes to a serious issue like fire danger, you're silent.
Thank you for your comments. I saw a hand in the back too. Sir, did you want to come up? And I'll bounce around here.
I don't know the protocol, so I don't know who I'm supposed to thank, but I'll just thank all you guys. I have a small business down on East Cotati. I'm not familiar with this product. My wife is very familiar, and my heart goes out to that lady, the two ladies that spoke. Oh my goodness, that was pretty crazy. Couple questions. I outsource my landscaping to a contractor. Will this ban impact third-party contractors, or is it just stuff that the city will be doing?
I don't have an answer, but we'll get back to you. We'll get that answer from
Yeah,
staff.
that'd be good to know. And if it doesn't include, I'm wondering if there's a way that can be addressed, because I have no idea what my landscaper's spraying on our weeds. I can ask him, I'm sure, but depending on his answer, I'd just like to have some leverage.
Sure.
If that's the case. I've also never seen a budget. So we've talked about the expenses, and when I hear $1,500 to $2,000, that seems pretty insignificant to me for a city's budget. Are we negative on the budget?
No, sir. We're 9 or 10 years running with a balanced budget. And I will tell you, I'm speaking out of turn, that $1,200 to $1,500 is not going to break the city of Cotati.
Seems like it to me. So okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. And just one other point, too. I mean, this is as a side note. You can, if you have a contractor, you're contracting out with somebody for whatever service, you can tell them what you want. They will charge you accordingly, but you can tell them what you want. Yeah. So that's has nothing to do with this issue, though. Yeah. There you go. I'm not a contractor either. Mr. Barrage.
Couple issues here. Mayor said at the beginning of this discussion that he was going to withhold comments until the public speaks. I think that's a mistake. I see this happen time and time again. What that suggests is that the mayor will only comment when the public has no longer any time or opportunity to speak. So I'd ask you and all the council members to revisit that notion from time to time, that it's very disingenuous and not in the spirit of open government. You should let your comments out as best that you are prepared for an issue, so the citizens can either listen and agree with you or start taking notes on how to maybe convince you otherwise, okay? Please keep that in mind. Also, the major use of these synthetic herbicides and pesticides are used in private ownership, private residences and businesses and so forth. I didn't hear in the staff report what that percentage might look like if the city of Cotati stops using it, but the rest of the community does not. That would have been an interesting statistic. What I see this as more of an issue of is a furtherance of an attempt by members of our community, taxpayers, citizens, fair game, to ban all carcinogens, all food products that are carcinogens, gasoline, fossil fuels, meats, dairy, eggs. When we go down this road, where I think some people are going in this room, is that, look at our lifestyles with technology and chemicals and so forth is not conducive to human survival. And this is just going down that road where, some people want to lead us into communities where we're sitting around the campfire in very humble situations, picking insects off one another and living off the land. Well, maybe we're going to get there as some progressives want us to go. But I see this is where we're going, and it's not fooling anybody. And the one gentleman had said, look at, I really want to see this happen, and we need to do whatever it takes. Well, think about those words, do whatever it takes. The government to take full control of more aspects of our lives, to dictate what we eat, what we do, what we spray, what we wear, what we drive. Whatever it takes. It's a common mantra with the progressive movement, actually, and we're all pretty familiar with it, whatever it takes. I think even the Hillary Clinton campaign used some of that language too, whatever it takes, right? So thank you, Council.
Sure, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name's Lori Eisler. I'm totally nervous. I didn't plan on speaking, but I've been waiting for this moment for years. I live at Windmill Farms. I'm sure you're all familiar of that PUD. I think it's called a PUD, townhouse complex. And I'm kind of dovetailing on the last few speakers who spoke about the use of synthetic herbicides in private situations such as PUDs, of which there are many in Cotati and Rohnert Park. And they almost all use glyphosates as well as broadleaf toxins for the majority of the complexes, which are turf. And so they're basically targeting dandelions and clover, which are, as we know, very beneficial. I'm kind of partial to both. I watch the birds picking in the grass, thinking about when is it going to be sprayed next. My son grew up playing baseball in those fields, or football, or whatever, and my cat died in its own vomit years ago next to one of those lovely picket fences. They're the white picket fences at Windmill Farms. Well, they spray glyphosate heavily around those fences just to prevent the weeds from getting near the fence. I've been hand-picking dandelions. It's easy. Just around my immediate neighborhood, and I have signs saying don't spray around my little house with my vegetable garden, but there's drift. And after years of nagging at this very hostile HOA, they finally agreed to try an organic product in replacement of the glyphosate. The word's not out yet whether they're going to agree to it. And 55 seconds. I have been campaigning and writing letters to make it a broad spectrum, every synthetic, because they're using it on the lawns. They usually tell us at the very last minute, we're going to do it, and then they take off for the weekend, and it happens Monday morning. So I want to know how we can bring this out into the private sector. I think it was Megan who wrote a great article in the Bohemian last week about the use in vineyards and along the Joe Rodota Trail. So you can do great work, but how do we get that word out to the private PUDs? Can they call the city and get information? I would love to tell them, call the city, and you'll find out resources how to deal with this. 1 second, thank you.
All right, no, thank you for your comments, appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. My name is Patty Selwyn. I'm with Preserve Rural Sonoma County. And I wasn't planning to speak, but there's some information that I think needs to be shared that hasn't come up yet. The childhood cancer rate in Sonoma County is one of the highest. Sonoma County and Napa County have the highest the highest childhood cancer rates in the state of California. Just after Fresno, another big agricultural area. Childhood leukemia for the children of farm workers has been skyrocketing for the last several years. The farm workers come home with this material on their clothing, the clothing sitting around, parents are washing it, so we're seeing tremendous health impacts. There are 18,400 lawsuits right now in the United States, just in the U.S. alone. There are lawsuits in Europe also, but 18,400 lawsuits against Bayer, which bought Monsanto a year ago. And just last week, Bayer said, maybe we make it all go away. We'll pay $8 billion to make these people go away. So this is a big health issue. Everybody's talked about children and the concern about, pets. What about the maintenance workers? The first lawsuit in the state of California was last year in San Francisco with a maintenance worker who had Hodgkin's lymphoma. We have a responsibility to the people that we employ, including your landscape. We don't let our own personal gardener use the stuff in our place. So you definitely have pull there with what's used. Monsanto there have been a lot of articles about the intimidation of journalists, about information that's getting out there that's wrong. The EPA in the United States and Monsanto is like a revolving door, and we're seeing a lot of the rollback of environmental protections right now because people from this industry have infiltrated the government. I'm not a big conspiracy theory person, but this is out in the national news. So we can't believe a lot of the garbage that's published saying, oh yeah, glyphosate is fine, we'll go ahead and drink it then. It's banned in many countries, and I think, when we talk about how are we going to let the public know about this, there's been articles, we're doing our best through our organization and other environmental organizations locally, but I think when a city says, we're not going to use this anymore because we don't feel it's safe, I think the residents are going to say, wait a minute, maybe we should rethink using this on our own property. So I think you set an example and you take a leadership role. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, you guys are not doing that loud clapping, but I'm looking. There is a hand up, single hand. Yes, Jenny. It's confusing now, which is, I can't see which is which.
Good evening. Jenny Blaker, Arthur Street, Cotati. Thank you very much for putting this item on the agenda. I did write an email, but it was this afternoon, so I don't know whether you all got it in time or not. I had wondered, well, first of all, I'd urge you to support the ban on all synthetic pesticides and herbicides for municipal operations in Cotati and to develop a comprehensive written integrated pest management plan. I had also been wondering whether this applies to other agencies in Cotati, the Sonoma County Water Agency, the Roanoke Park Cotati School District, as well as businesses, apartments, and mobile home parks. And I'm wondering if you implement this ban, whether this can be used as an opportunity for education and publicity to all those kinds of organizations and residents in Cotati. As well as the health impacts, which we've just been hearing about very movingly. I'm very concerned about the impact of any herbicides and pesticides on the ecosystem as a whole. And we know, everyone knows about the really serious decline in bee populations, but also crashing insect populations all over the world. And Damien, the city manager, mentioned this product called EcoVia, which is supposedly an organic, he said a repellent. I couldn't see anything here saying it was a repellent. It's called a broad spectrum insecticide. And the lists of pests that it's supposed to control goes on and on and on. And I'm thinking some of these are actually not pests. Some of them are useful, like spiders that control other pests, or ants, which we might not want in our kitchen, but there's no harm in having them in the yard. And also there's quite a lot of reference to fogging, which is spraying over large areas, like it mentions 30 feet around buildings and hundreds or thousands of square feet. And I'm thinking, well, surely even with organic pesticides, we don't want to be just spraying everything. We need to be much more targeted and knowledgeable about which things really are pests and need to be controlled and which are parts of the ecosystem that we should be leaving intact. So I was hoping that this could be just the beginning of a conversation and an opportunity for environmental education for the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm going to let those wavy hands go down and see if anybody, yes, sir. We frown on that, but I'll allow it. Sure, come on up.
It's more of a thought. I'm hearing a lot of support. Hey, George. I'm hearing a lot of support of this ban, which I'm glad to hear. And the money seems insignificant, but I'm also kind of seeing an opportunity in here. Cotati is a very close-knit community, and I think we have an opportunity to bring the community even more together. I'm thinking like community participation in eradicating this. It sounds like the product cost is one thing, but the manpower to do the increased maintenance. There's a lot of advocate groups that are here, and I'm wondering if they might be able to put together work teams to come out and do some of the extra work. There's service clubs. I know the Cotati Runner Park has a couple of Rotary clubs, you know. I think they'd be willing to do that. I don't know the correct term nowadays, but I see these developmentally disabled kids, and I see them being asked to do tasks that are pretty simple to do, and they might be able to participate in something like that as well. So I think it might help well up some more community pride in the area too. So
It was worth coming back up.
Amen.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, is there anyone else? Mr. Barrich? I allowed one, I'll allow another. All right.
That's a great idea. A few of us have recommended that in the past. As you remember, a few of my friends and I offered to adopt a park and maintain that park ourselves to help along and join the city side by side, but there's a liability issue, the city staff said. They can't have private citizens out there in parks doing that kind of work. So you might want to address that issue because we have volunteered.
Great. All right, thank you. One last round. Boy, everybody's going a second time. Really? Okay. I hope it's new and relevant information for us. Excellent.
So I just wanted to clarify, one of the things that my coworker and I go out and canvass on is when we're talking about a ban of synthetic pesticides, we're not trying to convince private citizens on whether or not what to do with their homes. This is simply advocating for city departments and county departments on the spraying of what they do with the lands they maintain. That's really what this is about. And so I just wanted to clarify for those who did not know.
Excellent. Thank you. Jonah. Remembered his name. All right. Yes, sir. In the back.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Eberly. I'm a citizen of Petaluma, but I come and play here and purchase things and stuff like that, as it was brought up by someone else. I want you guys to ban the use of the chemicals. I would love anything. I'm a medical provider, so I would love for you guys to force me into a whole different career because we are not destroying ourselves anymore with things that we're doing. It was brought up, I'm a beekeeper. I like to eat, so please don't destroy my food. I don't beekeep for business. I beekeep to try to counteract the damage that we've done as far as the nation to our pollinators. I like my flowers. I like my food that I grow myself and things like that. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran that was sent overseas due to a mission that had to do with chemical warfare. So I would like to point out, more in response to one of the other speakers, that there's a difference between, trying to do something smart that's not going to send us to the Discovery Channel, sitting around fire, grooming each other. But I will say that I would much rather take that future of grooming each other around a fire as opposed to having our citizens be marched into trenches and told, hey, look at the horizon and smile at the bright light and the big wave of particles coming at you. Or, hey, we're going to hose you down with Agent Orange. So I will say that as a veteran, I would much rather be grooming each other around a nice little forest fire, eating healthy food. So thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ann Levin, and I'd like to add something that I don't think has been mentioned yet. I've learned a lot of this recently. I used to use Roundup because I'm horribly allergic to poison oak, and my husband would spot spray with Roundup. We don't use it anymore, and we have found an alternative, and it is hard to find, but we did find one. It's called Natria. Anyway, I'm friends with some people who started Preserve Rural Sonoma County, and I've learned a lot in the last little bit from going to forums, and they've had a speaker in who brought a lot of information together from about Roundup. The book is called Roundup, actually, that I've been reading. And I think you will be on the forefront of a good thing if you decide to go forward with banning synthetic pesticides, because more and more information is coming out about the cover-up that Monsanto did do with Roundup. It's probably going to be proven to be carcinogenic, and I think California actually has said that it's carcinogenic now, not just probably carcinogenic. And so I think that no matter what it costs and so forth, as many others have pointed out, I think it's an important step to take, and even if we don't rectify all the things that cause poor health, as this gentleman mentioned, this is a good one to start with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, and one more thing.
Yes.
It does stay in the, people don't realize that it stays in the ground. I've been reading about this. It is water soluble, and you're not supposed to spray it near streams and so forth when they're active. But actually it is also, it is trapped in the fat of animals, and it gets into the, can travel into the streams and then into the vertebrates that are at the bottom of the stream, also into soil, worms, things like that. So and it lasts. The expert at one of these forums said that somebody asked, how do you get rid of this? He said, you really can't. It's just it's gonna be in the soil, but we can at least start to reduce our use of it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to comment that's not had a chance to? Quickly seeing no hands, I'm going to gavel the closure of this public discussion, and thank you very much. And we're going to go around the table and see what comments council members have. There might be a couple of questions for staff, a couple of questions that came out of the public. But I do want to say, I usually go last, I do want to say I received, I think, 15 or 16 emails in the last few days about this topic, and they were all in support of the ban. So I appreciate any and all comments that come in. And when it comes to, you know, here's another level of government that's going to go down the road and ban this and ban that, and I'll just say, I'm driving the damn bus tonight, so that's where we're going. Having said that, I will start at this end of the table and start with Councilmember Moore.
Is that a biodiesel bus?
All electric. All electric.
This came up a couple of years ago when I was mayor, and I was talking to the city manager about that, and we talked about the minimal application of it. It is something that I think that needs to be addressed. I don't know, and this is maybe a question that I can address to both the city manager and our attorney, what would preclude us from banning glyphosate citywide?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, under state law, I think the city is preempted from banning glyphosate use. It's basically allowed under state law, so the city doesn't have the ability to prohibit third-party use of it, but that's why most jurisdictions have focused on their own use.
So we can create smoke-free zones and support of the American Cancer Society and limit smoking in public places, but we can't limit, I mean, we can limit the use of glyphosate by our personnel, but that's the maximum we can push.
Correct. The state regulates pesticide uses and decides which pesticides are allowed, and it has occupied the field is the legal term, and that prevents the city from regulating it.
Thank you. Well, it's obvious that it's a concern. You know, most of us, I think, realize and understand that Monsanto has lied to us for years. I do not trust them as far as I could throw them. I've had a close relative who died of liver duct cancer due to Agent Orange in Vietnam. And yeah, so I understand the chemical implications of the synthetics. Now, I don't think there's much more that I could add to these particular comments that would enforce what I think is my desire to eliminate these. I don't really have any further questions. I may have some further comments as we move along.
All right, thank you much. Councilmember Harvey.
First of all, I think that some members of the audience were a little bit confused as to why I was asking about the costs. I'm not concerned by these costs. It's really just a process. What I was trying to understand is because we have to approve these landscaping contracts. So my question had more to do with what is the process? Does this mean if we change the contract, do we have to go through that whole process? And that is what I was trying to get clarified. Of course, the more the items cost and the more people power is used, it will change it. So it really had more to do with that process. We can't just, change the contract without it coming back to the council. Secondly, one of the speakers mentioned that others had put in to have emergency use. I like that. I think that that's wise. I think you kind of step up to what you go after to get rid of certain things, and it's sort of, as I liken it to, as here is what you go after as a last resort, because it works. And then lastly, thank you, City Attorney, for clarifying that, because I was wondering about private use, and I thought that we couldn't regulate the public in that manner. But many of you seem to be extremely interested in this, and it might be worthwhile to start working at the state level if that is what's tying communities' hands to do that. Maybe that's sort of an effort that needs to happen, and I'm sure that we have plenty of regulators at the state level that can help with that. I think the lady that came up and shared her story about her son, I think that is just frightening. I have grandchildren that I bring to the parks quite often, and as was mentioned, the kids crawl around. We have to do the best that we can do, and I think one of the signs that was out there said something about, know better, do better. I think that we have learned over time that we didn't know that these chemicals did what they do. Now we know we need to do something. So I am certainly at a point that I'm willing to support eliminating all the synthetics, because it sounds like we don't really have much else that would be in our way. So I am certainly supportive of that as an effort. And that's my 2 cents.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Let me go down to Councilmember Landman.
You surprised me.
I know, I saw you reach for your glass. I thought I'd trick you.
So with that and with the dry throat, so let's see, some general comments. First of all, it was a suggestion of, and I believe this is something the county's doing. Ms. Kahn mentioned using a carve-out for some worst-case scenarios. I know we'll be looking at their language, and I would be open to something like that. I would want to make sure that it's something that's used in a worst-case scenario as opposed to the preferable hole that's wide enough to drive a truck through. But I'm sure you'll figure that out by looking at that, and that would be something we'd be looking for. At least I think I would be. So it was mentioned cost. You're right, everybody's right, it's not considerable. But we do like to try and keep the town good looking. It's important to people. So, but on the other hand, obviously, there's no question, health trumps that. So I'm very glad, who is it, Matthew said that the public will support us if things get a little more weeds. I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to send them after you when we start getting the complaints, because I'm sure we will. This will be a process to learn through. It was mentioned it would have been interesting to see the statistics of what the reduction in usage will be of just the municipal uses versus the combined citizens, all the businesses and all the private citizens in town. And I'm sure the discrepancy is enormous. One side is much larger than the other. Unfortunately, number one, it's something we can't control legally at this point. But number two, It's a matter of leading by example. If all the cities do this, if we start doing this, perhaps that action motivates people locally to start looking at how they do things. Look tonight. We have a local businessman who I've never met before who's down here, looking desperately for the exit right now since I pointed him out. But who's talking about how can I change the practices in my local usage? How can I talk to my contractor and get this? We have somebody from a local HOA wanting to know how to influence their board and how to make a change there at their community. And we have people talking about how can we change this back at our own cities. And really, the next step, the answer is probably easy. What did you do here tonight? You all organized, you showed up, and you made your voices known. You're all here together. This would be a perfect time for people from SCCA to talk to businesses who are interested in coming up with ways to talk to their local contractors. And HOAs, certainly that would be something you could help with. And HOAs are just boards like anybody else. If most of the people there, your neighbors, all agree we don't like this, we want it changed, and they show up and make that clear, your board will listen. Because if they don't, they'll probably have a new board before too long. So that's how you do these things. So I would encourage all of you, you've shown the interest by being here tonight. You can take this back to your communities and to all your individual spaces to do and help with the part that we can't do. Maybe we can kick it off and get it started, but maybe you can all help us finish it. So that's what I wanted to share with you. So while you're all here, share business cards and phone numbers, because now's the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Vice Mayor Skillman.
Thank you. So I began my legal career doing environmental prosecution, so I'm very much aware of how everything is very interconnected. What we do at our dairy farms, what we do in our fields affects everything. Just ripples on out from there. So I'm very happy to get behind this ban of all synthetics. I think it's clearly, I mean, we've been hearing from citizens. We've got citizens here tonight, which is always fantastic. And what's great too is that we don't know. We have requests, we put things on the agenda, and then suddenly there's this outpouring of support one way or the other. But we don't go out and take polls beforehand so that we can make things popular. So just wanted to clarify that as well. But really appreciate you guys taking the time out tonight of your daily schedules, and clearly there's some strong passions behind a lot of the statements and stories here tonight. So thank you very much for sharing this with us. Very much appreciate it. And I know I'm going to get groans, and my father would be so proud, but it really is a grassroots situation. I mean, we really do need to have people address it on an individual level, and if the cities can lead by example, that's fantastic. But it's great just to be able to see that the people and the citizens in our city are very much behind that. So that makes me even more proud to be part of this town. So thank you guys.
So my microphone was off, but I did groan at that point.
Thank you.
Just to point that out. So, you know, we had some other example of another topic that came up just a few meetings ago, where we were looking at the cost of doing something differently. And that cost was far more significant than $1,200 or $1,500. It was in the $15,000 to $17,000 range, and that was having the municipality of Cotati convert to 100% green power. And although that's a chunk of money out of our budget, again, we felt that it was really important to spend that resource, the public's money, and spend that money for doing the right thing. And I think clearly here it's even beyond obvious, you know, when we're talking this really small amount. I would be in favor, I will come out right now and say ban all of the sides, but I think we're a little bit more strategic and we don't react fast. That's what how government lives. So I think we will develop an integrated pest management plan. We'll look not only at what may be a vote to ban glyphosate this evening, but look at further reaching out, and then also looking at other municipalities in the county and what they're doing. So I think it's going to be more of an inclusive plan. I don't think it'll take us that long to get there in the big picture, But I really feel that's the direction we can go. And then that'll come back to a public meeting, we'll have another discussion, and there'll be a decision made whether we ban all of their use for now into eternity. So there is a bit of a groundswell, I don't know, that's kind of a dramatic word, but a bit of a groundswell of support. So we have Santa Rosa, Windsor, Sonoma, the county of Sonoma County, and now potentially, we haven't voted yet, and hopefully the city of Cotati. So, will other cities come on board? There's a good possibility. I had 2 different council members from other cities contact me after the night that we voted on going 100% to Evergreen Power with Sonoma Clean Power, and they said, we're feeling the pressure. It's already going to be on our agenda in a couple of months. So these things happen, and it just needs a bit of the ball rolling down the hill. So, and I have to say, and this is, I can't make this comparison because I do pull weeds throughout the city, as a matter of fact. But besides that, for me, pulling a weed is actually, it's kind of therapy. Now, I'm not volunteering to go around all the city planters and pull weeds, but over the years, my wife and I have done a lot of that and have planted, a lot of things like poppies and city planters where you don't even have to water these things. They come up naturally, they reseed. So there's so much more that we can do. We've learned a lot over the years. Some people want us to go backwards. I think we're moving in the right direction with hopefully the action that we're going to take this evening. So, and there was also one other very curious email I got today that talked and had a link. I can't remember, I think everybody might have been copied on that, about a company that uses steam to remove weeds. So yes, you saw that link. So anyway, it's really good stuff. All right, I think I'm done. So yes, you have one more thing, Councilmember Harvey? Please.
So it was brought up a couple of times also about education, and I think whatever it is that we decide to do, I think that we have an opportunity in the Cotati connection to publicize and help educate with that. I think once we, commit to whatever it is we're committing, I think telling people in that newsletter will be very helpful. And we can also provide some of the links to more information for people to possibly move forward in their private lives and change that.
Very good. Appreciate that. Okay, so...
well, with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to make a motion if you're ready.
I would be delighted to hear one.
First of all, knowing that you like to pull weeds, I'd like to say we would love to invite you over to visit more often, the yard and the driveway. Whenever you're free, come on over. Having said that, I would like to move City Manager to implement a proposed phased ban on glyphosate use for municipal operations, to develop a comprehensive written integrated pest management plan, and to bring a full ban on synthetic pesticides/herbicides back for review at that time.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Yes. Please.
I'm very interested in the motion. I don't know that we need to phase it. I think we can ban it right now. I don't know that we use enough that we need to worry about a next application. And this would also accelerate our integrated pest management plan effective date. Because if we say we ban it effective October 31st, we'll have a plan in place by November 1st. We don't have, what do we have, 2.5 square miles? I mean, we can't be using that much of it.
Well, my only thought, and the reason I asked if we could actually make that jump tonight, you look at something as seemingly innocuous as our Ecovia EC on packet page 34. Looks pretty good. It's a botanical. It's largely thyme oil, rosemary oil, and there's something called 2-penethyl, and I feel like the mayor, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this one, something-inate.
Phenethylpropionate.
Propionate, probably propionate, I think, yes, thank you. I actually did a little research on that. It appears that it's a naturally occurring substance, but interestingly enough, it's duplicated chemically by creating the ester of two things through condensation, 2 different chemicals. So now that is synthetic the way it's created, even though it's a complete analogy of. So this is the type of thing I would like staff to actually look and make sure we're doing this right. because I don't want to find out a year from now, whoops, we've been using 2-pentanol propionate, and that actually perhaps it's problematic. I don't think it is. I'm very confident it isn't, and that's why I was willing to push for this, because I think this might have been lost, but we've actually, and I'll give our staff credit, every time I've talked to them over the years having misgivings about this, they've been, no, we have these concerns, we hardly use this, we try not to. The tough areas, the cracks, this, and we do. That's it. So I knew they were going in this direction, but that I just want to make sure that we don't, wind up doing it wrong. I'd like to make sure whatever we come back and vote on actually
Along those
is a
same
full ban.
lines, we had a comment from one of the citizenry regarding the use of vinegar on weeds. I myself use vinegar and salt, and that's it. Now, I don't know that there's any salinity issues with the soil after that, but again, I don't know that we use a ton, and I think that would hold us through while we develop our integrated pest management plan, if we needed to. I mean, it's $2 a gallon for vinegar, $5 for 5 pounds of salt.
But that doesn't do anything about, for example,
But it goes-
the pesticides, because that was the one I was pointing at as one example. And so I'd be comfortable myself with either vote unless there's some legal concern, but it just struck me that it might be a couple of months isn't going to be harmful. I want to make sure we've done this right and we actually do a best practice. And that's the only thing I'm thinking. I'll toss it out to staff perhaps to fill out a little fuller, because I'm not seeing we're dragging our feet because there's not an interest. We just want to make sure that we actually do this right.
Yeah. I'll just in terms of context, what would happen if the council moves forward with this vote is Public Works would effectively stop using Roundup, which is the only real synthetic pesticide that we use right now on any sort of regular basis. So it would stop that basically effective immediately. And then within the month, we'd come back with a revised landscape contract that would institute that for all of the landscape contractor practices. And then the integrated pest management plan, the purpose of that really as a vehicle is to both explore the alternatives and document them all so that it documents basically this practice that we put into place.
I mean, I would like to see as part of the IPM, which is easier to say, by the way, at this time. I think, you need to know what are we using, what's the quantity, where are the locations, what's the frequency. I think there's baseline data that should be gathered. Again, it's not rocket science. It's not going to take years to do. That's where I'm leaning towards. Let's develop that plan in a very timely fashion so we can then make these assessments and make decisions on, okay, now we've added to glyphosate, we've added this to the list, and it could be a broad spectrum that we're just not going to use any of these sides in the future. But I think we better have the right information before we just say we're going to ban, because we don't even know. I don't know that we have the data tonight to say here are all the different things that we're using, which are probably few and far between. I get it, but that's just my concern. I'd rather do this the right way, which I think is taking a step slower, but still moving forward. That's how I look at it. I'm not trying to convince you. I just, you don't. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a 5-0 vote.
I will also add, actually, Mr. Scott, Craig, reminded me too that in terms of Roundup use, the next scheduled use for either the city or the contractor isn't until March or May, this next spring. Sure. So it's not like any use is impending. So we do have a couple months, I think, to sort this all out. And
so we don't have it scheduled for use in the next several months.
Correct.
So what would hurt with just banning it now?
No, the ban on glyphosate is what we're voting on.
Right.
Yeah. But I thought
let me go to staff one more time.
You had said everything, all herbicides and pesticides.
Mr. Mayor, since I have a motion on the floor, I think I'm getting asked to amend it. Let me check with staff one more time. From a legal perspective, with what we've put forward as a motion for tonight, what's on the agenda, from a practical standpoint from staff, would it be excessively problematic to go ahead with the amendment that Mr. Moore has offered?
So,
since it is just direction, it has, how this will actually be done has to come back. This is just what we're directing you to do. We're not telling you how to be done, so we still need to hear that.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah, well, so part of the motion on the floor is the ban of glyphosate, which I think we have a firm handle on what that means, and it's not scheduled for use for a while anyway, so that's no problem. In the meantime,
You got to try harder to talk me out of this.
No, I know. In the meantime, we can develop, and let me back up a second. The direction, as I'm understanding it, even in the existing motion, is that the council wants to move towards a complete ban of all synthetic pesticides, which I don't think is problematic, but we just need to go through the process and document it in the IPM, which would come back later to the council.
Because we don't have a resolution tonight that we're voting on.
Well,
What
I
we're
find
voting on is
myself-
direction.
And there's also nuances like emergency use and other things that just haven't been thought through at this point. So I think the IPM is the best, in my opinion, the best vehicle to actually document all
I find myself in the wonderfully comfortable position. I'd be happy with either position passing. So I don't feel bad about it. I think we'll get to the same place. One way like that, the other way a tiny bit slower, but essentially still right away. Yes, we're going to do better, I know. So we have a motion on the floor. Unless somebody has an argument to amend it or something, we'll leave it. If it fails, then I'll support this one quite happily.
Well, I didn't make a second motion. I was just having a discussion after the initial
Right.
motion. So,
Yeah.
if you have a motion and a second?
I don't know if we had a second yet, so.
Yeah, we did.
Did we have a second?
Oh, you did, okay.
Seconded it. Yep. She beat me to it.
So it's kind of up to you guys, I guess.
So if you could kindly read that motion again? Do you have that there?
You said.
I could if you'd like. Direct the city manager to implement the proposed phase ban on glyphosate use for municipal operations, to develop a comprehensive written integrated pest management plan, and bring a full ban on synthetic pesticides/herbicides at the same time.
My only concern is the term phased. It's too open. There's not definitive. I mean,
Yes, but that's under direction from the 5 people sitting up here. So,
And the definition of phased, again, if we can, I think we can get some comfort with this, because I agree, phasing sometimes sounds nebulous and it could take forever, but all I heard was city staff is ready to do this right away, and the people we contract with, you have to drag them in here, change the contract and get that done, but that's a pretty short-term thing. That's the only phasing we're talking about, other than coming back with an IPM and then the full ban at that time on other synthetics.
Yeah, the phasing is primarily the contractor, because we don't have a revised contract today.
So even if we directed you to do that, you'd still have to redo that contract, right?
Correct. So
there we go. That's what we're
I
talking.
mean, we have to come back within a month with the revised contract for the landscape contractor. And then we have to make sure we fully vetted all the alternatives and document that in an integrated pest management plan, which will be in the short term, but maybe a little bit longer than a month. That's what phasing means in this context.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second. I'm going to ask again, is there any further discussion?
We would just like that integrated plan sooner rather than later. So
That's direction.
definitively before we have to get into a season of any more spraying of anything, if that's clear enough.
That's pretty clear to me.
Understood.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Please show a 5-0 vote. And I would thank everybody. Hold your applause. Please do us a huge favor. We still have a meeting to continue. If you want to have any discussions, you kind of have to go outside, because even the hallway, all that noise bounces right back in. So I'll give you 60 seconds to start to head out if you want to leave. You're also welcome to stay.
Really?
Or not. Compensation. Okay, it sounds pretty quiet now. All right, we will now move on to item 10B, which is endorsement of the City of Cotati's application for the statewide Park Development and Community Revitalization Program grant funds. City
Thank
Manager.
you, Mayor, members of the council. So this item is in response to the grant requirements for this program. And just as a little bit of background, I'll just touch on some of the highlights. In 2018, there was a statewide bond issued, referred to commonly as Proposition 68. This was a bond passed by the voters, and it provides $650 million to be distributed over multiple rounds to create new parks and new recreation opportunities in underserved communities in California. So just to confuse things, this is round 3 of the grant, and it has $255 million available in round 3. They call it round 3 because rounds 1 and 2 happened with a prior proposition, Proposition 84, back in 2006. So there's continuing that process and confusing everybody with round 3 for this process. So the grant money is being administered by the State of California Parks and Rec's Office of Grant and Services, as stated in the staff report. Cities, counties, special districts, joint power authorities, and 501c3 organizations are eligible for the grant, and the grants can be used, as I touched on earlier, to create a new park, expand an existing park, or renovate an existing park. And then for a park to qualify for a grant, it has to meet a couple of eligibility criteria, and those are within a half-mile radius of the project site, that there's no more than 3 acres of park per 1,000 people, and also, or actually, no more than 51,000 area median income, which was set as 80% of the statewide median. There's a 80% of the statewide average. So the maximum that can be applied for is $8.5 million, and there's a $200,000 minimum for each grant. And the city is currently in the final stages of completing the Parks Capital Plan, aka Parks Master Plan. And it includes a improvement plan for Civic Center Park, which is the park right behind us here. And this is one of the 2 projects that would qualify for the funding under this grant program. Draper Park is the only other qualifying park, but it's a neighborhood park as opposed to more community park, and it has far fewer proposed improvements. And therefore, because of the accessibility and the fact that it also is better located to also serve the west side of the city, it was chosen as the one that would be a better park to apply for a grant for. The city's grant application request is about $2.8 million, and this would fully fund the proposed concept plans for the park. The improvements include addition of a playground equipment to go along with a lot of the rec programs that occur in the Civic Center right now. So to complement that well, also picnic areas, a fenced dog park, splash pad, skate park, tree plantings, walking paths, and a paved parking lot near the baseball field, and a lit crosswalk at the entrance on West Sierra Avenue, so people can, with a higher level of activity in the park, they'd have at least coming from that direction, from Cypress, would have a safer way to cross West Sierra. And then the more detailed description of the park improvements are shown. There's an attached figure that shows the proposed improvements. This would include all of the improvements shown on that figure. This is packet page 48, except for what's called optional phase 4. That wouldn't be part of the grant application, but everything else would be. And if the full grant amount is awarded, the proposed project will be funded by grant monies and potentially partly some general fund, but it would be adjusted to stay within our financial limits, of course, of the grant and the city funding available. The grant timeline is applications are essentially due now, and the awards would be, all the awardees would be notified in January if they've gotten the grant or not. And like I said, this is the first of, I believe, 2 rounds in this particular bond. And there's also another component of this bond that's formula based on population. And that's, part of that, as we discussed during the budgeting process, that's a $200,000 grant, which the council authorized for Cotati Park to upgrade the play equipment, and that's already in process. So this would be an additional grant out of that same bond issuance. And I think that kind of covers all the high points, so I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
All right, excellent. Any questions? Start down here with Councilmember Moore. No questions? Harvey? No question? Councilmember Landman? I always skip you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did have one question.
So this is the first pass. We get 2 swings at this, correct, potentially?
That's my understanding, yes.
And if for some reason, and I don't even want to put this out in the universe, but for some reason we weren't granted that grant, if we put this into as a long-term project and did it on a piece-by-piece manner, what are we thinking for as a time, how many years of a time frame would that take probably to get done? Even any way to assess that, even as a guess?
Not at this point. We're finalizing all those like longer-term projections because the capital plan is about done and about ready to bring the planning commission and council.
So we should all just be crossing our fingers like crazy then.
Yeah, I mean, but I think regardless though, it's going to be like all capital projects. It's going to be an exercise in prioritization and then breaking them up into pieces that can be funded year to year. But in terms of time horizon, I don't have a good answer yet.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Let's go back to Councilmember Moore. He does have a question.
What is our AMI?
Well, so
Apparently we qualify?
Well, so we qualified under the parks per 1,000 people criteria. There's a tool that you use to determine the AMI within the half-mile radius of the park. Okay. And this one, the criteria is 51,000. I think we're around this park, we're around 57 or so. So we didn't qualify in that criteria, but we qualified in the parks per 1,000 people.
All right. Vice Mayor Skillman?
No questions.
Questions. All right. Let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. Ms. Alderman. I don't have to look too far around the room. It's easier now.
I think there's too much in this plan because there's no parking on West Sierra. You're doing all these things without, and it's also going to block, with all the parking, it's going to block the farm and everything. So the other thing is the buildings. You want to put all these new things in, but you've made no plans for City Hall or the Ray Miller Community Center. I just found out today that the City Hall is almost 100 years old. It was built in 1922 as Cotati School. And we don't know if it's earthquake thing. I know that in 1970, the Ray Miller was Cotati School. I went there, and it was an established school. So that's at least that building's at least 50 years old. So you're wanting to put in improvements. You might have these improvements, but the buildings will be uninhabitable. And it's just not Cotati. My family, why we moved to Cotati from Pacifica was there was a sign next to Cotati School that said, no overnight parking of your horse. And so the parents figured this was a great town. We don't need all of this. We've got everything. The other thing is you guys need to work on something for the west side of Cotati. We have a hillside of Thomas Page School as our park. You know, how about the homeowners by George's Trail, seeing if that could be done as a park, because the homeless and everything are living there. And or just something, you did it so you could check the box, you gave us our hillside so you could check the box that it was throughout the city on the general plan. But that's not, the kids in our neighborhood, we have, one of our little ones was here, our next door neighbor, We have 5 2-year-olds that have nowhere to play in our neighborhood. And so we need something out there. And you guys have them all over here on the east side. So anyways, that's my spiel.
Thank you. George, did you have comments?
What I've asked for, and we still haven't received or gotten yet, is a discussion on what's the best use of that property for our community. I think at this point we need a healthy discussion about affordable housing. This is prime residential area here. And I think there's a strong need for affordable housing in Cotati. We haven't looked at it. As soon as there's the first sight of a grant, everybody starts salivating on this city council without looking at the real needs of the community. Housing is a crisis, not only in Sonoma County, but right here in Cotati. You should be having an open, healthy discussion with the community and having a workshop down here and say, what do you really want to see out there? You want to see some people playing out there? Or do you want to see 100 families living and thriving here in our community? We're not going to see that because I don't think you care about really affordable housing and prime residential real estate like this out here that could be used for that. And it's very sad. We need more affordable housing, and you're kicking that can down the road here. A beautiful opportunity for a healthy discussion, again, missed.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing and bring this back to council for discussion. Anybody like to start this off? I will say at the public workshops, I think there was at least 2 or 3 that I attended. So I think I went to all of them. Nobody ever did bring up housing.
I did.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing that. So.
He was here.
Oh, I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying I didn't hear. I didn't remember hearing that. So, anyone like to, Mr. Councilmember Lamon?
I'll bravely jump in and say I don't want to build housing on parks. Having said that, let's get back to what we're talking about. Good question about actually parking in the area, because I know when we have events here, multiple events, sometimes it can get a little tight. I'm looking at this map. Are you reconfiguring the parking in front of the Ray Miller Center and the basketball courts? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, so in front of the Ray Miller Center, it would about roughly double the number of spaces that are there today.
Okay.
If it was reconfigured like this. And then over by the basketball courts in front of the bleachers, that's, right now it's just a big gravel area, and so people kind of park wherever in a more disorderly way. And so having a paved area with lined parking would be more efficient parking. So I'm sure we could probably squeeze some more cars in there than we have today.
Okay, that answers that question for me. I would imagine there could be some worst-case scenario, some confluence of events where parking gets tight and spills out a little bit in the residential area occasionally. But as long as that's not a regular feature of the design, then that's not a problem, because that happens everywhere, and you can't design around that. As far as the concept itself, not Cotati, playground equipment, picnic areas, dog parks, splash pads, skate park, tree plantings, walking paths, and a lit crosswalk, of course. That's exactly Cotati. And this does serve the west side. It is just a 5-minute walk from my house. I have a daughter who lives down in Shell Beach now. He has a 2-year-old grandson. And they actually have a park roughly the same distance from them. The dinosaur park, because it has these old dinosaur things that were built in it. They go there almost every single day, and most of the people in the neighborhood do and use it. So I think this would be a valuable adjunct for everybody, young and old, in Cotati. And I would say, I'm just going to close with saying, I'm thinking of this. For years, we've had honorary mayors come visit us. They'll start picturing them. These are the things they asked for, and these are the things we told them. Yes, no, we want to do this. We will try to get around to doing this. But we haven't forgotten what they asked for, and I'm glad staff certainly hasn't. So I'm fully supportive of this. I think it's great.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Skillman.
Sure, and I would just throw in as well that all the outreach to the different HOA groups and things, I've had people coming up to me and especially parents of kids who are about my son's age or a little bit younger saying that they're very excited about the prospect of a skate park potential so that kids can stop using the basketball court. So yes, I think this is a great idea. So,
All right, thank you. Councilmember Harvey?
Yeah, I hear the concern about getting there being a 5-minute walk. There's good news and bad news about living in a rural area. The good news is you're in a rural area. The bad news is sometimes it takes a little bit to get there. When I take the grandkids to the parks, I usually either go to La Plaza Park or I go to Myrtle Park, and it's a little bit of a walk for me to walk with them. So I think that that's just a reality unless you live in a apartment complex or something like that has its own park attached to it. You have to go a little bit of a distance to get there. And I am not aware that we own any land over on the west side that we could utilize for a park. And those areas over there have not, gifted or given or offered to sell cheaply property to us to enhance that. So, this is property we have. It's right now just a grassy field, and many people, as was pointed out earlier, have asked for many of these items. So I think that if we can make this happen utilizing the means that are available to us through this funding, I think that we're better off. Otherwise, we'll be, as was pointed out, it could take us many, many, many years to do this in tiny little phases. So hopefully we can move forward with this, and hopefully we are granted a grant.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Moore.
I support it. It's a park grant program, so since we have a park, we can apply for a grant. We may or may not get it. We might want to look for affordable housing grants down the road, and then maybe some retrofit grants for other projects. But for the park, well, I think we should go with the park grant. Just
All right.
a thought.
Very good. One thing that did jump out at me was the lit crosswalk coming off of Cypress across West Sierra. I had a phone call or email now about 3 or 4 weeks ago from residences off of Cypress on the, why am I forgetting the name of the loop? Oretsky Way, thank you, that loop. And so I met with them. I met at one of the homes, and there were 5 homes that were represented, but there was another half dozen homes that were up there, and some of the apartment folks who say they take their lives in their own hands trying to cross the street there with kids, either on bicycles or not. So of course, I parked here and then I walked to the residence and I took my life into my own hands. People it's not even necessarily a speeding issue, but they just don't seem to pay attention that there's a crosswalk there. And doesn't matter if they're going east or west, they just go. So, I mean, I literally was out halfway in the street and somebody, had to come to a quick stop, or I'd still be laying down over there. So I think that aspect alone of a lit crosswalk, especially that little intersection, guaranteed there's other intersections, and I know of them, and there's some that I don't know about, but I think that alone would be a huge improvement of getting kids safely to and from, because that is a big park and a big grassy area where they can go and recreate. So anyway, yes, I'm in favor of this as well. Okay, it is time for a motion.
I'd move to adopt a resolution endorsing the City of Cotati's application for the statewide park development and community revitalization program grant funds.
Second.
Wow, 2 seconds. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Please show a 5-0 vote in favor. And we will move right into city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So we recently had National Night Out, and we had 450 hamburgers served. About 400 people attended, and we had a food, movie, slide.
Can you fix the math on that?
Some people had two.
Some people had 2 burgers.
Thank you. Just checking.
Yeah, it wasn't a typo. Yeah. Some people had they came with big appetites because everything was donated, right? The food, the movie, there was a slide, like a bouncy slide for kids, and all that was there, for, as well as the Rancho Adobe was there with their fire trucks, which kids love, and also Public Works was there with their vac truck. It's a very impressive piece of equipment. So next time they'll clean the tables off at the end of the night with the vac truck, but we didn't do that this time. Yeah, Remif probably wouldn't like to hear that. We can delete that. So also this Thursday, the police department is delivering school supplies for Thomas Page, for every student at Thomas Page. This is paid for 100% by donations and includes a backpack. So, you know, when every year when you start school, you get your school supply list, and the teachers have lists as well. And the police have got donations for all of it, for every student at Thomas Page. So when they show up, they'll be there giving them all the supplies. They don't have to go buy it. So it's great especially for families where, you know, money's tight, and it's one less thing they have to buy. Also, we have a couple construction updates. We have the 2019 street paving project, which the council authorized the award of, and also the East Cotati Avenue grant funded. It's partially grant funded, partially Measure G. They have started, so you'll see changeable message signs, also project signs going up, and door hangers in the neighborhoods where those projects are happening, so people are aware. And the first thing you'll see is some potholing for utilities, things like that, before they start digging up the street and doing the paving work. Projects currently are projected to be complete by October 22nd, if there's no extra time for like weather delays and that sort of thing. And just as a reminder, the project is basically there's 2 projects, but in terms of paving and street rehabilitation, it's going to be East Cotati from Sunflower Park, the city limits, all the way to Old Redwood Highway, right? So the whole stretch of East Cotati Avenue. The L section areas that were not previously paved are going to get reconstructed, and Old Redwood Highway from East Cotati is going to get repaved to William and George Street, right there by Papa Murphy's, and then there's going to be some spot repairs out to 116 for any of the localized areas of failure. So that's the scope of the project, and I mean, I guess I know you guys all know this. I'm just speaking to the choir, but it's $3.8 million of paving work, which is a lot for any. I mean, in terms of just as a rough comparison, for our general fund, that's, you know, basically half of our general fund operating budget, which is just to put it in perspective in terms of how much money that is relative to the size of the city's budgets. It's very impressive, and I don't know of any other cities that are doing that. So just wanted to make that point. On the kind of downer news, the West School Street Pathway project bids were opened, and they are higher than the engineer's estimate. So anyway, we're not recommending bringing that forward for award right now. So we're evaluating the bids, looking at the reasons for why maybe it was more expensive, potentially rebidding it during a more bid-friendly time of the year when contractors are actually looking for work. That could be part of it. Sometimes in the summertime, when you bid stuff out, contractors are already full, their schedules are full, and they just really have no interest in the work, but they figure they'll bid high, and if they get the work, they'll figure it out, right? So anyway, we're working on that, and so look for more in the future. On the recreation front, we had our first ever sold-out junior farmster camp at the Veranda Fletty Ranch, and the campers spent the week learning all the ins and outs of animal caretaking and life on the farm, as well as basic building skills. I don't know if you saw the vegetable box out there. The campers built that, and they also helped with the park benches that are there inside the ranch for future events. And they also planted multiple apple trees along the West Sierra side, along the fence on that side. And they had an ice cream party at the end with a parent tour, and the kids got to share what they learned. And so they had a homemade ice cream, like in a Ziploc bag, where you can shake it up and try to make your own ice cream. But apparently Strauss donated as well, so they didn't have to eat lunch that day. They just had ice cream. And anyway, it was a great experience for everyone. We're looking to offer more mini camps or workshops this fall and winter there. And I will have to say, especially since the pigs have been there, it's just like constant traffic on that trail along East School Street. And especially the runt pig.
Yeah.
It's like the star of the show.
I know.
Everyone wants to see that one. Yeah, and it's actually small to sneak between the gates where the other ones can't get to all the good bugs and stuff. That one can sneak through the gate and get to the other parts of the ranch and come back. And hopefully it'll grow to be as big as the other ones. And also today is the first day back to school in the school district. So just a reminder to please be extra alert and patient when driving or as a pedestrian, as everyone gets back into the swing of things. So a lot of traffic, a lot of extra traffic on the road as parents zip around and drop their kids off. And as classes begin, we do look forward to working closely with the recreation and hospitality students at Rancho Cotati High School, which is a new program they added, and on some fun new projects. Where the high school students there have been interested in working with the city on different projects. So look for more on that this fall and winter. And also the fall and winter activity guide should be out in early September, so look for that. And finally, I'll just say if you have any questions or information about these programs and events, you can always contact Ashley Wilson at awilson@cotati.org, or always look at the city's website or Facebook page for the latest information. So with that, I will leave you. I'll leave you with that, is what I meant to say, but I started the sentence wrong.
Didn't quite come out right. It's all good.
Anyway.
Any questions for City Manager on any of these topics? No? Okay. Then we'll move to item 12, which is City Council Member Reports, and let's go way down here. Notice how I'm stalling and give everybody a chance. Councilmember Moore.
Was that planned that way?
Well, yeah, I just was giving everybody, so you know where I'm going to look this time. I'm looking at you.
Oh, I see. No, I don't have any reports.
No, you don't.
It's the safest thing.
Oh, you said you had nothing. I heard that. Councilmember Harvey.
I have nothing to report.
Wow, this will be quick. Vice Mayor Skillman? Yes.
I did attend National Night Out and then also the mayor's and council members' dinner on August 8th. And I was able to stay for the presentation. And even though I was temporarily adopted by the city of Cloverdale, I made it very clear that I was representing Cotati. And I invited everybody to the Accordion Festival. That's it.
Excellent, thank you.
Nicely done.
Councilmember Landman.
One thing to report. So let's see. Last week, as chair for Sonoma Clean Power, I was asked by the Center for Climate Protection to have a meeting and a discussion with council member and 2 other chiefs of staff for council members from the city of Fresno. Fresno is evidently so big that their city council members have their own chief of staffs to discuss. They're interested in following the direction that we've done in Sonoma County and starting a CCA. So they want to hear about our history, the challenges, how things have gone. Should be interesting. Fresno's, like I said, little city, about 500,000. So it's about a little over 500,000. So it's kind of the size of the county. But the interesting thing is their electricity usage is about double ours because they have a lot more industrialization. So they should be fine candidates for something like this, and it'll be interesting to see. Next month, I've been asked to travel down again to Fresno to actually have a meeting with the mayor and city manager to discuss the same things, further discussions along the same lines. So they're just beginning to look into this. So kind of nice that they're looking to Sonoma County to see how'd you guys do it, because it looks good to us. So that's my report.
Excellent. Okay, I have a long one. Sorry, this time there's just lots of meetings going on. So since our last council meeting, in no particular order, we had the Health Action Council agenda, and the big thing that came out of that meeting was we got a preview of the Portrait of a Graduate product. that was assembled by a number of people from the Health Action Council, and it's going to be coming out in the form of posters and newspaper ads and so on and so forth. But if you wanted to see what is up now, there's a website of SonomaPOG.org, and the POG is Project of a Graduate. So SonomaPOG.org, and there's quite a bit of information on there, and they worked with a number of school folks and health action people. So it was a pretty comprehensive and snazzy looking thing, like somebody from a New York City ad marketing agency kind of put it together, but it was all done locally. Also had 2 different meetings with Ag and Open Space, and primarily we're going over the narrative of the Vital Lands Initiative, which we've been working on for 2 years now, and that is supposed to be going to the Board of Supervisors in late October or early November, which I'm going to try to get to that meeting as Chair of Ag and Open Space for support for this document. It's in great shape, and all the different various groups are in favor of it, but there's still tension with the ag community. They think it's too open space and environmentally oriented, but there's so much about ag in this plan that I think the staff there has really gone overboard in a good way to do that. So, and also at the mayors and council members, which I was only able to go to the mayor's meeting, and I was just sick that night, so I went home. There was a discussion on homelessness in Sonoma County and the governance, that there's this body of elected officials and staff people, a number of subcommittees. So there was some discussion. This was presented to us by Don Schwartz, the Assistant City Manager in Roanoke Park, of just kind of the representation of small to medium-sized cities. And he is the lone representative of all the small and medium-sized cities. I believe Santa Rosa, I have it written down here, I think Santa Rosa has 2 seats. No, the Board and the Board of Supervisors, they both have 2 seats. Rightly so. Santa Rosa has 56% of the homeless population, so rightly so. The unincorporated area is 17%. The medium and small cities is 17%, and then Petaluma is 9%. So it's interesting how the unincorporated area, the county, does have 2 representatives on the executive board, and the medium and small cities have 1 representative who is on a technical committee. So anyway, there was some passionate discussion from different individuals, including the mayor of Santa Rosa, who's been on this committee for some time. And I guess there was this upcoming deadline of either this week or next week. And so at first we were going around the table kind of leaning towards some of the suggestions that Mr. Schwartz had. But then when it came to Tom at Santa Rosa, he really kind of convinced us otherwise, that if there's a lot of disruption, we're not quite sure what could happen. And he brought up just the most valid point of all. He goes, Santa Rosa could be asking for more seats, but that's not the point. The point is this is a county-wide problem. And somebody is homeless, that means they're not necessarily residing in a given night in Cotati or Santa Rosa or Petaluma or Roanoke Park. They don't know. And it's a huge problem. We've talked about it, we've heard it. So I'm trying to get more involved in this, and I even had a meeting with Legal Aid of Sonoma County, and they're putting together kind of a white paper for all the jurisdictions. So I got to see a draft of that, and I had some comments on it. So the attorney for the housing policy attorney for that group met with me to talk a bit about this homelessness issue and the various challenges that are out there, and how what they're trying to do is they're trying to put together a document that cities and other jurisdictions can sort of adopt. And it'll include even things like resolutions. So here's one way that you can help, here's another way. So it's a work in progress, but I really think the clock on that is going to be pretty quick. I'm guessing probably within a month or a month and a half at most, we're going to probably see something come to us in the form of a presentation from legal aid. Okay, I think there was other things, but nothing significant that needs to be brought out. So we will go to item 13, public comment on non-action agenda items. Step right up.
For future agenda, you know, we had one city workshop on the Floody Park project. The mayor promised us another workshop. I'm asking that we have that another workshop sometime in my lifetime. We had one workshop on the City Hall master plan for the park that you voted on tonight. We had one. Mrs. Harvey was there, I was there. I think we had one or two other citizens in attendance, relatively a short workshop. No other city council members at that workshop. There was not 3 workshops, there was one. Tonight, regarding the herbicide and pesticide issue, you know, if you're going to start going down the road of looking at carcinogens, you're going to have to start looking at alcohol, which may cause birth defects. Smoking marijuana is full of carcinogens, which the city has failed to address. You've got rat poisons, all kinds of other poisons, charcoal, charbroiled meats are carcinogens, gasoline's a carcinogen, secondhand smokes is carcinogen. Maybe you want to ban cigars, cigar shops. You know, this is a really interesting issue about carcinogens. Food sweeteners, drink sweeteners. Many of them are known carcinogens. So the mayor wants to, that's a train the mayor wants to get on. I'm not sure I want to get on that train, but I respect your opinion, sir. You know, I've seen the city of Cotati sit here in these chambers, want to ban handguns. I remember that night. That was interesting. When Harold Berkemeyer and the rest of the crew was here with a room full of people banning handguns. That didn't last for very long. And then Mr. Lamman was very proud of banning big trucks downtown. Town's big on banning. Loves to ban. It's a great train called the ban train. And planting seeds in planter boxes in town is inappropriate. Maybe you should have a talk with the police chief about that. Planting seeds in the planter boxes. Pulling weeds in town, we're not supposed to do that. Citizens are not supposed to get involved in any of the public works like that because there are liability issues. So please, council, don't be out there pulling weeds on public property. Remember what Mayor Pacilardi said. We love our weeds. Right, Mrs. Harvey? Remember that night? That was kind of comical. We still joke about that from time to time. Yeah, pulling weeds in Cotati. Mixed bag, Mayor, mixed bag. I mean, I love your heart. I love your heart, but, you know, mixed bag about pulling weeds, public property. They won't let me do it. And I thought about Prue Draper tonight, kind of miss Prue Draper. You know, there was nights that she'd come in here and really be upset when people were commenting on city issues when they didn't live in town. She'd come up to people and go, "Where do you live? Where do you live?" I remember that. Rest her soul. Okay, thank you, council.
Thank you for those comments. Those were great. Ms. Alderman.
I found it very interesting that you've had such a long discussion on the homeless at a time when we don't have ability to do a public comment. You won't put it on the agenda, but you'll talk about it at length in the programs and part of this council member reports. The other thing, I'm switching gears here, the West School Street, Richardson Lane pathway, it was $100,000 over budget. It's badly designed. There's a crosswalk there, and it's around a blind turn. You're planning a crosswalk, and that's where Prue Draper's son died. I saw it. I was on Richardson Lane, and I saw her son killed. And now you want to put a crosswalk and encourage people to go down there. You know, nobody walks down there. Nobody walks to school anymore. Have you checked with Thomas Page? People go by our house, and there is 1 or 2 usually boys, 5th or 6th grade, that go to Thomas Page. But there's not a need to go to Thomas Page School. It's a big safety hazard there, going around the bound. So why are you spending the money instead of doing the West School between Clifford and Maple, which is much more costly because it doesn't have property lines and stuff? Why aren't you saving the money and doing the part where people actually walk? And you also need to fix things that you have already used your compliance money. You have a cutaway for a sidewalk, it stands alone, surrounded by rocks. Wheelchairs and walkers cannot go over rocks, and that was your money that you decided to spend, and that was your great plan. You need to plan better for these things. This is supposed to be accessibility money. There is a woman 3 houses down from Clifford Street on West School who is severely disabled in a wheelchair, and she needs a sidewalk. And this is what this money should be, not for West School, Richardson Lane, where nobody walks. So get your planning together and use the money where it's supposed to be used for the disabled. And like, I can't take my walker up that ramp that you've never fixed for the last 5 or 6 years over rocks. So anyways, that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no one else, I'll go ahead and close this item. And we'll look at item 14, which is information received after the agenda was posted. I assume we have nothing? Nothing to report. Okay. And then announcement of closed session topics and adjournment closed session. We have public employee performance evaluation, California Government Code, section 54957, title City Manager. So we will adjourn to closed session and report out when we are done. Thank you.